So I'm here with Kirsten. She has a long history within the medical community. So Kirsten, why don't you introduce kind of your context within the medical community for us?
Hello, Ken. Thank you for having me. My name is Kirsten. I'm a registered nurse in California. And I am here today to talk about really my experience, my own personal experience with my vaccine and the reactions that I had. And then also over time, collaborating and working with some support groups and hearing in my community as a healthcare community, what we are doing and what we are not doing to support this particular patient population that are having these reactions. So.
Okay, great. So why don't you fill us in and give us kind of a short summation of what's been your experience, because you were vaccinated, had some reactions yourself. So how was your health before the vaccine and then since the vaccine?
So I was vaccinated on Christmas Eve, December 24th, with the Pfizer vaccine. I was a little reluctant to get the vaccine because I have no health issues. I have a little seasonal allergies, that's it. I actually even reached out to my doctor because I was a little concerned about getting it, just because I do have those little allergies. But because I do work in a hospital setting, I was encouraged to get it, which I agreed to. So I got the vaccine, my first Pfizer vaccine on December 24th. I felt fine, actually, that night. Went home, I was a little tired. I enjoyed Christmas with my family the next day. And then a couple of days later, I started noticing that I almost felt sick, like I was coming down with a flu. I didn't have a fever, but I had a lot of swelling in my head, like sinus pressure. And I just felt like an overall jittery feeling throughout my whole body. And that went on for about a week. I called my doctor and she said, yeah, we're kind of hearing some feelings like that. And I was so congested that she put me on a Z-Pack, and maybe there's a little sinus thing going on. Anyway, I took the full course. About a week before I was due for my second shot, I was feeling great. I turned the corner, I was feeling better. I checked in with my doctor again. So I agreed to get that second shot. And I think that was a big mistake for me, but I didn't know at the time. So I got that second shot, and it was really interesting. When I was sitting there, we have to wait like 15 minutes. I had this tingling sensation that literally went from my toes up to the top of my head. And I thought, this is really strange, but no other symptoms. So I thought, I'm not going to say anything. Went home that night, rested on the couch, woke up in the middle of the night, with all of the typical reactions that they tell you are possible. I had 102 fever. I just felt like a truck had hit me, like a flu. I felt like I had the flu. I woke up the next morning, and my lymph nodes on the vaccinated arm were like the size of a golf ball. I was like, wow. And I think I forgot to mention, after that first shot, I had a follow-up mammogram, and timing is everything. So I had to go in prior to my vaccine. I had a mammogram. They wanted me to come back for an ultrasound for something they had seen. So I came back a week after that first shot, not knowing what we know now about mammograms and the vaccine. They did the ultrasound. Everything was fine with my mammogram, the concern they had. However, when they went into my axilla area, they were like, wow, this is really, really swollen. And I said, well, I don't feel great, and I had that vaccine. But at the time, it was like, nope, that can't be it. So they wanted to do a biopsy. And I held off on that, which I have still held off on, because then we started hearing more and more that this vaccine was causing lymphedema, axillary edema with women on mammograms. So that's something I have to get to down the road. But it was interesting, because through this whole journey, I have struggled with that lymph swelling, whether it's under my jawline or my arms. So after getting back to that second shot, the second day I had that fever, I felt achy, but the next day took a little Tylenol, everything was fine, I felt better. But boy, I would say again, a couple of days later, it's like I systematically walked through every symptom of COVID. I started with the numbness and tingling in my fingertips, my toes. I had this fatigue that I can't even explain. I just couldn't get off the couch. I couldn't move. My legs were so weak. And what I started realizing is maybe because I'm a nurse, I started watching my vital signs. Which I had never done before. And it was probably hitting me even after that first shot, and I just didn't put it all together. And I got an Apple Watch for Christmas, and that thing became my best friend. So what I started noticing was, oh my goodness, every time I stood up, my heart rate was soaring to like 170, 180. I would get dizzy. I would sit back down. Within like 30 seconds, my heart went right back down to like 70, 80. So it was like an immediate, I was like, wow, I think I have postural tachycardia, POTS. I kept in contact with my doctor. We just kind of rest, wait and see what's going on. And again, as I said, I just really systematically started working through these symptoms. Headaches, I would have weeks of just these debilitating headaches. The fatigue, the lymphedema, shortness of breath. I started going up my stairs and I was out of breath. I couldn't even, it was like, what is going on with me? And this is a person who, I have 3 boys. Before December 24th, I was running them to football games, baseball games. I was walking every night with my husband at least 3 miles. I was super, super active. And here I was, I couldn't even get off the couch. So I knew something was going on. I did make a couple of trips to urgent care. My internist did a battery of blood tests on me. Everything came back negative. All of my blood work looked perfectly fine. They tested for autoimmune. They tested for everything. My EKG was fine, other than it was tachycardic. They told me in the urgent care, yes, you do have postural tachycardia. They did the sit and stand test, and I definitely was positive for that. So then I started researching what's going on, and my internist was very on board with the researching because she started sharing with me that she was starting to have some other, and at the time, it was mostly healthcare providers because we were the first ones to get it. Other people with some similar, but not all the same symptoms as I had.
So you said you earlier, when we were talking, you said that you kind of avoided, like my wife, she's like MRI on her brain, MRI on her spine. You kind of avoided that. But so what did you do? I mean, how did you do in the research, and where did you go? What path did you take?
So I was pretty confident because I've never had any health issues. I'd had a physical like the month before the vaccine. Everything was fine then too. So I was pretty darn confident that this was a definite vaccine reaction. I mean, just sitting there after the vaccine, I had the surge. I was telling the other nurse I was with, it almost felt like caffeine was like surging through my body. So I knew it was a vaccine reaction. So I was a little reluctant to start going to all these different tests because I was already seeing the writing on the wall. My blood work was coming back normal. My EKG was normal, just tachycardic. So I really started thinking this is something inflammatory. Something is going on at a deeper level. So I started doing some research online. I don't know if I can say names about who I was following care-wise, but Dr. Pinsky is Dr. Drew Pinsky. He's the love line.
It's your story, right? So
yeah, and he had COVID in the winter, and I listened to a lot of his stuff, and I really started following his journey. And I was amazed at his recovery and his treatment by a group of doctors with the InCell DX team, Dr. Yo and Dr. Patterson. So I jokingly say this, but it kind of was true. I started kind of stalking Dr. Yo on Twitter. I was really starting to follow what he was doing, how he was treating Dr. Pinsky, and Dr. Pinsky was turning the corner. And I could really relate to Dr. Pinsky because I had that brain fog. I couldn't piece sentences together. It was so strange. And that brain fog set in with me about a month after my second vaccine. So it was very strange. A lot of these symptoms didn't just all pile on at once. They really I progressed through them. It was, so when I say I systematically walked through the symptoms of COVID, I truly believe that. So at the time I was struggling with brain fog, and I was amazed with Dr. Pinsky because he was talking about this treatment that they were doing with him and how his brain fog was kind of lifting. Some of his symptoms that I could relate to were improving. So I started reaching out to Dr. Yo, and God bless him, he started responding, asking about, is it possible that this vaccine could trigger COVID symptoms in somebody? And I think initially it was, you might be having a heightened immune response. That could be your POTS symptoms. You might, but then I continued to reach out to him, and he was agreeable, thank heavens, to look at my blood work. And so then that's how I aligned with this team. And that's really how, for myself, I realized this is not something that I'm going to go to a doctor and they're going to be able to necessarily diagnose me with, because based on my blood work with the InCell DX team, it was an inflammatory thing at a very deep layer of our immune system. And so they run a cytokine panel, which basically shows if you have these abnormal biomarkers to see. When I got my blood work back, that really to me was like, okay, it was a little peace of mind for me, because I thought, do I need to start going and hitting up neurologists and, all these different doctors. But I did register on their long haul index, which is basically a biomarker that they have created and used that validates people's symptoms. So for me, that was very, very telling.
So kind of like in their in their pathway of practicing medicine, they're actually, sounds to me like what you're saying is that they're open to the vaccine causing a long hauler, COVID long hauler type effect as a reaction to the spike protein or whatever it is that and then they're trying to say, here are the symptoms, and based on these symptoms, we have this diagnosis, because this is all new, and the traditional medical community is saying, well, let's rule out MS, let's rule out Parkinson's, let's rule out POTS, let's do your blood work. We're going to rule out what is traditionally the pathway of ruling, which is our medical model. And it sounds like Patterson and Yo, based on what you said, are saying, well, we're going to actually be open to looking at the vaccine being the impetus for these reactions. And then we're going to say, hey, if you meet these criteria, then we're going to basically say they're creating this diagnosis and then treating it based on blood work. So they're not just one size fits all, but they're looking specifically. Very interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. Their focus has always been the long haulers. That's how they started. But like I said, I was so grateful that they were willing to look at me, because I'm obviously, in the beginning, I was told, well, maybe you had COVID. Maybe you had COVID. I was tested a number of times just working in a hospital. I did have a couple of exposures here and there. I worked with students, but I was tested many, many, many times, always testing negative. And like I said, the symptoms and the timing of the vaccine were just too, it just really led itself to that direction. I like what Dr. Yo and Dr. Patterson, their feeling on all this is looking at that deeper layer is addressing the fire within your body rather than masking the symptoms. And so that was something for me that spoke to me personally. I know they're doing research right now on whether this is possible with the vaccine. I do believe they are starting to find protein in the monocytes with vaccinated individuals, but that's what they're researching right now. So, but I don't question myself anymore. I don't question any of it because there are so many people that have similar stories to myself.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, every day
Yes.
there are more people that are reaching out with similar symptoms. If if you could stand before, a semicircle of chairs, and sitting in those chairs were our government officials, our medical, people from the CDC, the FDA, people in the media, what would you tell them?
Oh, Ken, I would love to. I said I want to stand on the mountaintop in my neighborhood and yell to everybody. I think what I would want to tell people and is we have to, knowledge is power. And I'm so disappointed as a working in the healthcare community that we are suppressing knowledge, information. I've taken to social media because this has been an excellent outlet to align with other people who are going through what I'm going through. It's been an excellent outlet for me to research, to learn more, to see what is out there. And for me, it's been so disappointing to see the suppression of viewpoints and thoughts that go against what, and I understand, I am pro-vaccine. I get a flu shot every year. My children have been fully vaccinated. But when we're pushing something out that has not had clear FDA approval, has not been through all of those rigorous testings, we have to be open to fallout. I really hate to say it like that, but we have to be open to the potential of reactions and things that could be going wrong. And for me, it's very frustrating. I would want to tell the CDC and the FDA and every doctor that I could, you have to start listening to people that are coming in with these symptoms, because in my community, it's a small community, but yet it's a big community. Word travels. You talk to a couple of people and explain what you're going through, and all of a sudden I get a phone call from somebody I don't know. Hey, I was sent to the hospital. I had this, this, and this. They sent me home with anxiety. And I'm going, what? And this is not just a one case phone call that I get. I've received multiple phone calls of people saying, oh, they're telling me it's psychosomatic, it's in my head. I've had a friend actually tell me she was referred to a psych doctor. And these are real symptoms, but because there isn't always a diagnosis at the neurologist or the rheumatologist or all of the specialists that they can give, because a lot of tests are coming back normal, people are being turned away. And so for me, that's why I think, boy, these research doctors, this team at IncelDX, they're looking at a deeper layer, and that is fascinating. And that is what we should be doing to help people.